Ever been so tired or fatigued that it led to you making a very poor choice? Well, you might not be alone. As we make more decisions throughout the day, our ability to make thoughtful, sound choices starts to deteriorate. This is why decision making gets harder as the day goes on. Welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Dr. Ty. Welcome back to another episode of On the Couch with Dr. Ty. I'm Dr. Ty, and today we're going to be talking about the biology of psychology, how your brain, your body, and behavior connect. The biology of psychology, or the study of how physical bodies, especially our brains, create thoughts, emotions, and behavior, is quite interesting to say the least. When you do something like laugh at a joke, cry, or panic, or even fall in love, it's not just psychological, it's also biological. Your brain and your body are constantly in conversation with one another, literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Quick question. Have you ever felt your heart race just before a test? Anybody? Come on, let's be honest. Well, that's psychology in action, and it's powered by biology. Today, I hope that we are going to be able to explore how neurons, hormones, and brain structures all work together to make you who you are, that individual that's unique. We're all familiar with the Wi-Fi system, are we not? Well, I'd like for you to, for a moment, to just kind of think of your body as a Wi-Fi network. It's like the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Think of the nervous system as your body's Wi-Fi network, connecting your brain to every cell throughout your body. It has two major parts: the central nervous system, also known as the CNS, which consists of your brain as the command center, if you will, and then a spinal cord. This is the messenger, or the superhighway that I like to call it, that literally delivers and receives all the major signals. The peripheral nervous system, or PNS, connects the central nervous system to the rest of the body, muscles, glands, as well as organs. And it's split into two areas, one called the somatic system, which controls voluntary actions like waving or just typing on your cell phone, and the autonomic system, which controls involuntary actions, kind of like the control of your heartbeat or even that steak that you digested the other day. I'd like you to, for just a second, take a nice deep breath in, hold it for a second, hold it, now release. That exhale that you just did, it activates the parasympathetic system. That's called your built-in chill button. Now let's move into the neurons and those neurotransmitters, the tiny talkers. This is your neuron and your synapse and synaptic activity. Your brain works through tiny communication specialties or specialists that we call neurons. You've got about 86 billion with a B of them throughout your body. They don't touch, but they pass messages through electrical impulses and chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Let's check out some of the guys that are first and foremost on this list. One that you might be all familiar with is dopamine. That's the reward chemical. It fires when something feels good or when you achieve a goal. It's like a dopamine high, is how I refer to it in my classrooms. Then we've got serotonin. That's that mood stabilizer. Keeps you calm and content and just chillaxing, if you will. How about acetylcholine? That helps you move and recall things like where you parked at the department store when you picked up your medicines from the pharmacy or your clothes. Then we have norepinephrine. It gives you alertness as well as focus. Endorphins, these are the natural painkillers that make you feel a euphoric feeling after you exercise or you work out really hard in the gym. Each time you receive information, you have something called neural firing. And these neurons receive information through dendrites or like tree like branches. They send information through a part called the axon and passes it on to the synapse, kind of like an electrical text message, if you will. If enough neurons fire together, then they form patterns. And those patterns are your thoughts, your habits, as well as your memories. So let's look at how some of these neurotransmitters feel or how they act in real life. Can you ever think of a time when your dopamine might have spiked naturally? Anyone? Think about it for a second. If dopamine is that reward chemical and it fires when something feels good or when you achieve a goal, maybe it might be something like eating chocolate or even finishing a project. Believe it or not, dopamine can also spike when you're falling in love. Every pleasurable moment, even checking your phone, taps into the same biological pathway. Let me introduce you to the brain. That's the big picture. The brain itself, the most complex structure in the universe, has a number of areas, anatomical structures, things that are just fascinating that we're still trying to figure out today. Let's look at the frontal lobe. This is where decision making and problem solving and personality and impulse control houses. Basically, it's kind of like your inner CEO. Let me give you a quick fun fact. This area isn't fully developed until you reach that mid 20s mark, which explains why sometimes teenagers and their decision making can be questionable. Let's move on now to the parietal lobe. That's the area of the brain that processes sensory information like touch, temperature, and spatial awareness. It helps you not bump into furniture or pour your coffee into your cereal bowl, like I do quite often. Then we have the occipital lobe. This is the visual processing center. This center turns light into images that you can recognize. Sometimes, if there's damage here, it can cause visual hallucinations and or blind spots. You ever had a temporal headache? Well, the temporal headache's usually in the temporal lobe, and it also handles hearing, language, comprehension, as well as memory. Also, the reason you still remember every lyric from that one song you used to know 10 years ago. Then we move into something we call the limbic system. This is deep inside the brain. This is the control hub for your emotions. It also houses the amygdala, where the fear and emotional reactions take place, the hippocampus, which is not only a fun word, but it's where memory is formed, and the hypothalamus, which regulates that hunger, that thirst, and your hormones. I'd like you to just reach up and put your hand on your forehead. Go ahead, reach up, touch your forehead. That's called the frontal lobe. Every time you resist checking your phone during the listening to this information, your frontal lobe is doing that work for you. Thanks, frontal lobe. Appreciate you. The chemical influencers in the body are the hormones and the endocrine system. Your brain doesn't do all these things all by itself. It partners with what we call the endocrine system, which sends slower and long lasting chemical messages called hormones. The key players in this game are one, adrenaline. This triggers a fight or flight response. Then we have cortisol. This is usually considered the stress hormone, and it's helpful in short term and harmful long term. Oxytocin. It promotes bonding, trust, and affection, sometimes called the love hormone. Then we have testosterone and estrogen. These hormones influence mood, energy, and attraction. These hormones also shape how you feel physically as well as emotionally. When you do public speaking, you got to stand up in front of the class, or maybe you just got to speak to a group of folks at church or just anywhere. It actually triggers adrenaline. Your hands might begin to sweat. Sometimes your heart feels like it's going to beat out of your chest. But when you finish successfully, then dopamine and the endorphins start to reward you. Job well done. That's biology rewarding bravery. So when we look at the big picture, it's when the mind meets the body. We're all biology. Here's where it just kind of comes together as one happy package with a bow on it. Every thought, emotion, and behavior has a biological fingerprint. But your brain isn't fixed to its consistently adapting and changing. This concept is called neuroplasticity. Every time you learn something new, practice a new skill, or even change a habit, your brain physically rewires itself. Your biology changes because of your psychology. Imagine that. Mindfulness and therapy can reduce overactivity in the amygdala and strengthen the frontal lobe control. That's mental training, changing the brain's natural wiring configuration. So, let's talk about how we wrap all this up. Brain power. It's not just in your head, it is your head. So the biology of psychology is really the story of connections, how electric and chemical signals inside us create our personalities, emotions, as well as our behaviors. When you feel joy or sadness or excitement, remember, it's your neurons, your hormones, the experiences working in perfect harmony. It's not just in your head, it is actually your head. How is that for biology and psychology in a perfect union? This was another episode of On the Couch with Dr. Ty. As always, stay safe and stay smart.